Hey, everybody. Welcome to Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I'm Ryan Herget.
And we got a lot to get into today, but before we do, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. We'd love to hear from you. Today's episode brought to you by Jerry's House of Pancakes and Colonoscopy Center. Because after an invasive procedure by a bunch of strangers, nothing sounds better than a hot stack of flapjacks. That's Jerry's.
Where do you come up with this stuff?
Huh?
Where do you?
It's a real thing,
Stuff?
or it should be. What I'm doing is giving business ideas to the community.
I love that. You're a giver. You're a giver.
I am a giver.
Love that. We'll take it.
But beyond the colonoscopy, what are we doing today?
Well, we're going to talk today about contractors. This is something that I know you and I are very passionate about. I had an opportunity to work in the contracting world for a couple of years. You have for almost your entire life. So I'm really anxious to share with the group today. Anxious isn't the right word, but excited to share with the group today. How do you find a good contractor? What are the questions that you should be asking? And what's important? What's all this stuff that they come in here talking to you about? What's it actually mean to you, the homeowner, or the person that's hiring this person? So I figured there's nobody better to pick their brain on than that subject than you.
Well, only because Tom Silva's not available. But the thing is, with getting a contractor, it can be the most important part of your project.
Without a doubt.
You can get the best materials from the best suppliers in the world, and if your contractor doesn't know what he's doing or she's doing, let's not be sexist. But if he doesn't know what he's doing, then no matter what your materials are, your project's going to be subpar.
No doubt, no doubt. So let's dive into that. How do we quantify what, does my contractor know what the hell they're talking about? Do they know what they're doing? Have they done projects like this before? These are the questions I really want to tackle for people. I get asked all the time, hey, do you know anybody that does this? Or do you have a guy that does that? And I think in the contracting world, everybody's looking for three things. They're looking for somebody that can get the work done quickly.
Yep.
They're looking for somebody that, is going to do a good job. And ideally, they want somebody who's going to do it cheap as well. Well,
but you and I know
that doesn't work.
Right.
So I'd like to kind of start right there. Anytime you're working with contractors, if you can almost envision this big pie graph, and you've got good, fast, and cheap right here. I'm completely stealing the story from a good buddy of mine, but it's so true. You get to pick two. You don't pick all three. You don't get somebody that's good, fast, and cheap, because if they're cheap, they can probably get to the project pretty quickly. But man, it may not be done very good, because most people that do good work, they don't do it for cheap. I don't know anybody that is good at what they do that says, you know what, I'll do this for $100.
And a funny story about that. So 8 or 9 years ago, I get asked to bid a deck. And it was this crazy thing, right? 2 layers and stairs coming off at different angles and a pergola built in, stained patio around from connecting the stairs with a built-in fire pit. And we did it, and it took us about 8 days. The whole time we were doing it, every day the neighbor would come home. He just had a little smoker stoop on the back, a little 4x4 or whatever. And he would come home and he would stand and watch us. After about the 3rd day, he came over and talked, and then he would talk every day about what we were doing. Well, then he asked me to bid his deck. Mm-hmm. Now, this cat had watched me build this deck and my crew for a week. So I give him a bid, much different deck, much smaller affair, but it was about $5,400.
Yep.
So he calls me and he says, hey, I got another guy that gave me a bid for $2,600. What can you do? I said, for $2,600, his name was John. I said, John, I can buy the materials. That's what I can do for $2,600. Well, he hired that guy. And so the original deck that my client that I built it for called it the Taj Mahal deck, so that's what we'll call it. He invited us over for a party, and we're out there on his deck. There's about 50 people on it. It's not flexing, by the way. And we're standing there talking, and he starts laughing, and he runs me out in the backyard to look at his neighbor's deck. It looked like a parallelogram. And it was dying off to one side. And
details.
Yeah, we were both laughing and cutting up about it, and he and I got on it, 2 200-pound men, and kind of just did a little bounce, and the whole deck went. Nice. My point is, this guy, John, he wanted it cheap.
Yep.
He wanted what I built, but he wanted it for a price I couldn't do.
I'd like to have a Ferrari, too, and pay Corvette price for it, but it doesn't work that way, does it?
No, unfortunately not.
Not as much.
I'd like to have a Ferrari and pay Yugo price for it, but
that'd be even better. So I think that, kind of wrapping up this point before we move on and really dive into the nitty gritty with how do you find a contractor, you really have to decide, because nobody in their right mind is going to do something cheap. If they're really, really talented and they have the skill set to do an extremely good job, and it's not going to happen fast. Projects like that don't happen overnight. And if somebody can drop everything that they're doing and get there tomorrow to do it, well, do you really want that person doing the project to begin with for you?
Right.
Because if they're not lined up with other jobs, are they really that qualified to do yours? I think that's a question you have to ask.
And that's exactly right. And the thing that you hit on a minute ago, when you talk to them, do they do your kind of project?
Sure.
If you're bidding getting your kitchen remodeled, and the guy shows up and he's got a portfolio, well, nobody carries portfolios anymore. If he opens his tablet, well, that may be, if he's got a paper portfolio, we could have a problem. But if he's showing you pictures of all the decks he's built and there's no kitchens in there,
are they the right person to do a kitchen for you?
Right.
So let's start at the beginning with all this, because so many contractors I know are, they advertise boastfully everywhere, licensed, bonded, and insured. Let's break that down and actually share with people what the heck does that actually mean, because in our state, in Indiana at least, being licensed, what's that actually mean, Greg?
Well, I'll absolutely take that one because that's my favorite one.
All right.
So in the state of Indiana, like if I want to pull permits as a general contractor in Indianapolis, what I do is I sign up for liability insurance through an insurance provider.
Okay.
I fill out a form with the city, and I pay a fee on a couple $100. Boom, I'm a general contractor.
So 3 steps: fill out a form, pay a fee, and whatever else there, and bam, I'm a general contractor, and I can go start doing any projects I want to do.
With no proof that you actually know what the hell you're doing.
That's comforting to everybody.
Back when I was in the lumber game as a custom home estimator, I got sent to a construction project management class in North Carolina. All the guys there were from North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and a few of us from the Midwest. Everybody couldn't believe how easy it was to become a GC in Indiana, because in those other states, you have to prove you actually know what you're doing.
Yep.
So when somebody says licensed, that just means they filled out a form and paid a fee.
Nice. And then bonded, tell us about that one a little bit. I know that can be a little bit broader term, but simply put, what's bonded mean to the general consumer?
Well, simply put, the person that defined it for me was a contract attorney, and I don't speak that language, but it's a protection for the homeowner.
Okay.
Or for the person hiring the general contractor. If the contractor doesn't complete the work or just disappears, that bond gives them some way to get some of their money back.
Got it.
And then insured, of course, is general liability insurance. That's what we all carry as general contractors. Most municipalities require up to $500,000. I get $1 million because I like even numbers. And it's not that much more, but it just says, as a general contractor, if I screw something up on your house, if I accidentally knock out a foundation wall and the front room caves in, my insurance will cover that.
Got it. So kind of skip, moving to the next step there, you brought up the concept of money. And I know that if I've heard one horror story here, I've heard 100. And that is, a contractor took my deposit money and they disappeared. I could never hear from them again. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Certainly with contractors, when you're taking on larger projects, you mentioned your deck a few minutes, or, the neighbor's deck. There's $2,600 worth of wood cost right there. And a lot of contractors may not be in position to, or, willing to, assume that out-of-pocket expense before getting a project started, and I understand that. But what's fair? What protection can you give to a homeowner, or what should a homeowner reasonably expect to do as far as a deposit before they get their project off the ground?
Well, that's a great question. As a contractor, I never did a job without a deposit.
Okay.
Ever. I had a couple people that would never give a deposit. So we just didn't do business together.
Sure.
My rule is, you and I both need to have skin in the game.
Yeah.
By the time we get to completion, I'm going to have my skin in the game is my time, my tools, and the money I'm paying my help.
Yeah.
Your skin in the game is you're going to pay part of that money up front.
Yep.
Now, depending on what it is, depends on what you take as a deposit. If it's a multi-step thing, let's say we're going to be at it for 3 months. I'm just going to take 25% up front. And then we will have written into the contract different benchmarks where we have what's called draws, which just means you give me a little bit more of that money.
Yeah.
The other thing is with a simple project like a deck, then I want 50%. Because typically 50% or a little more is going to be my material cost.
Absolutely.
I've also had homeowners, and this is funny. I got into this group that my wife's a part of and started doing work for a bunch of them. Really nice people, but there was a level of trust there.
Sure.
Most of them knew who I was. Most of them knew I'd done work for other ones. And so one of them, I was getting ready to do a kitchen remodel for her. And we were blowing out a wall and putting in a giant picture window in the kitchen and all this other stuff. And she said, I gave her the price, sat down with her and her husband, and she said, so do I just give you a check for this now? And I said, no, you don't pay me all of it now. I may not show back up. She said, well, I trust you. You'll show back up. And I said, no, don't ever do that. So that's the other thing. Don't ever pay all up front.
Right.
Now, but that doesn't really answer your question. How do you ensure that they're not going to skip town with your cash?
Absolutely, because I've heard that so much from homeowners, from other contractors that have shared those stories, from suppliers. So what protection can a homeowner take, or precautions maybe is a better word, to make sure they don't find themselves in that situation?
Well, it all comes back to planning and
Definitely.
Having steps to the process. So let's jump to that for a minute. If you know what you want done to your home, then you should have a written plan, right?
Absolutely.
Of exactly what you want done. Now, when you get that written plan together, that's when you get it with a contractor.
So by written plan, let's back up just a step there. Let's pretend that we're going to do a kitchen remodel here. We've got a house that was built in '78, and we want to do a kitchen remodel. What steps does a homeowner need to take when it comes to planning before they start calling contractors? Because everybody is watching HGTV and they see, I want this kitchen. Well, how do they actually plan that out so they're not wasting both the contractor's time and even their time trying to get that point across?
Well, the first thing you want to do is, if you're doing your kitchen, understand that for a period of time, 3 to 4 weeks probably, you're not going to have a kitchen.
Right.
You're going to have a microwave and a hot plate. And you have to plan your life around that. We did a kitchen over on the west side a few years ago, and every morning, instead of the mom making breakfast for the family, because that was kind of her gig, every morning she went to McDonald's and got stuff for the family. So everybody was eating Egg McMuffins and hash browns for breakfast. The other thing is, I would encourage somebody, if you see something on HGTV and you go, oh, that kitchen's beautiful, start looking around online. Mm-hmm. Go to IKEA, go to Cabinets to Go, whatever you want to do, Home Depot, it doesn't matter. And start looking at the kind of cabinets you would like and get an idea of what those cost. Because if you're in your mind thinking, I got 10 grand, I want my kitchen redone, and you pick these cabinets and quartz countertops and all this other stuff, and the contractor comes in and says that's 30 grand, you've just wasted his time.
Yeah.
And yours.
Yep. So let's take that another step further, because I certainly get the idea of having a plan and knowing what you want before you invite people out to your home to say, hey, can you do this for me? And comparing products, we talked about that on a previous episode where, you were able to really help somebody get a better bang for their buck by maybe taking a step down with products in order to accommodate their budget. But let's kind of talk about, finding the right contractor here. I'm going to kind of shift gears here, because so many people will maybe interview one like, oh, he's awesome or she was awesome, let's just move forward with them. How important is it for somebody to shop around and maybe get 2 or 3 quotes?
I would suggest 3 to 4.
Really? Why so?
2's just not enough. It's just not enough. Okay. You don't have any comparative base to work with. If you get 3 or 4, and I would encourage that. I would encourage people, when I was a contractor, get other bids, see what they got to say. You're going to get a better span of price.
Sure.
You're going to get an idea of what each person is like, personality-wise, because that's a big thing, just like in the real estate business. If your personalities don't fit, however long this project is, y'all are married for that long.
Yeah.
So if your personalities don't work together, I don't care what his price is or qualifications, that's probably not your guy.
Yeah.
So you interview 3 to 4, and that's got to be the first step. And if one of them is pushing hard to get a close that day, like some of these window companies,
sure,
he's probably not your guy.
Why so? That stereotypical salesperson. I love sales. I've been in sales my whole professional life, and I certainly believe that you don't have to pressure anybody to do anything. Sales is about helping people discover that you're a good fit, right, and that they need you. And so, how do you respond to that? How do you find? Let me reframe that question for you. What are the things that are important when choosing that contractor? Because so many people, when they don't know how to choose, they just default to the easiest. Well, this guy's lower in price, I'm just going to go there. So how do they educate themselves on qualifications besides maybe looking at some photos of what they've done before, talking to friends, and looking at price? Is there anything else that a homeowner can do to make sure they're hiring the right person?
Well, a good part of that process is to ask the right questions.
What
of the contractor.
Okay, so let's dive into that, because I think that's what's important. And for me, I really want homeowners to take away here, how do I avoid making that mistake by hiring the wrong guy? So what questions should they be asking?
Okay, let's just do a couple examples. Let's say you're sitting down with the contractor and you ask the contractor, after you've talked about what you want to do, so how long do you think this will take? And he says, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, do you have any better idea how long it's going to take? What do you do first? Well, let's just stay with the kitchen motif.
Yeah.
Well, I still have access to my fridge. Where does my oven go? Are you going to cover my floor? I don't want my tile changed. I love it. How will you get in and out of the house?
Got it.
Will you need access when I'm not home? If you do, what does that look like? Are you going to section off the rest of the house so there's not dust from the demo getting into my bedroom and in the bathroom? All those kind of things. If the contractor, if he's done it before or she's done it before, will have answers to those questions.
All of them, yeah.
They'll put floor runners down to get in and out of the house. They'll have a plan for where the dumpster is going to go if they need a full dumpster. They'll have an understanding of what parking is going to look like based on what your neighborhood looks like. They'll have an idea how long it's going to take and what your inconvenience level is going to be.
Got it. So they need to have a plan for each and every one of those steps. I know when I was in the roofing business, it was so much about how are you going to protect my shrubs? How are you going to make sure you don't drop shingles on this Japanese maple of mine? So you had to really walk people through what does the day of the event actually look like, really to provide that peace of mind that they need to move forward, because taking on a kitchen project is not something people do every single day of their lives. And it's a major disruption in their lives, especially when you're talking inside the house projects, because now you're invading their space too. So that's got to add another layer of challenges, I would imagine, and having a plan can certainly alleviate a lot of that.
Yeah, you're invading their space and you're jacking with their routine. And you really... What I always did, when I would say 21 to 22 days. Like I would dial it in as tight as I could.
Sure.
Now, with a kitchen renovation, the first half of it doesn't seem like anything's getting accomplished. It just doesn't. And the way I always did it, I would strip out the drywall behind the upper cabinets and put in horizontal blocking, so I had solid surface to nail the cabinets to, and new insulation. And behind the stove, I put in rock wool insulation for an extra fire barrier and just little stuff like that. The first, say, a 21-day kitchen project, the first 10 days, it's not going to look like I did anything.
Right.
They need to know that.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way. I told the first kitchen I ever did, full blown, I told them up front, 21 days. 10 days in, and they're like, what the hell? Why aren't we, what are you doing? What are we doing? What's going on? And they're all freaking out. And I had to break it down for them. But that taught me a valuable lesson. Now I break it down in the beginning.
Yeah.
The first 10 days, it's not going to look like I'm doing anything. This is why.
And I think that's something that you do incredibly well, and I think a lot of contractors could even benefit from, or homeowners can really, put this into their, schedule when they're hiring somebody, is how detailed of a plan does this person have? Because contractors without a detailed plan generally are winging things, and when you wing things, you don't get the result that you generally want.
Right.
And, when a contractor's done 15, 20 kitchen remodels, they're going to run into some stuff, and that's all stuff just like what you just shared that you can pass on to that next project that you're doing. So that way you can alleviate a lot of those challenges, the stressors that come along with, having work done on your house, because you're invading people's space, you're invading their privacy, and if you're not clear about what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, frustrations, I would imagine, arise pretty quick.
Yeah, they do. And the other thing is, as a contractor, I always made sure there was a hot pot of coffee every morning. Go ahead and leave the coffee maker plugged in. We'll work around it. But because coffee's important, even though mine's out in the truck right now.
Darn it. So kind of putting a cap on the contractor, and how do you find the right one? Greg, what else is important for a homeowner to really grasp when they are considering taking on a project when it comes specifically to finding the right contractor and hiring them?
I don't think I understand the question.
Well, is there anything that we're simply, is there anything that we're missing here? Because we've covered, out-of-pocket expenses. We've covered some of the basics of licensed, bonded, insured. We've covered, the importance of having a plan and setting expectations up front. We haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet. Is there anything else that somebody should walk away with saying, hey, I need to know this, or that you want to pass along?
Yeah, there's another big thing that I think is super important. Now, let me preface by saying, if somebody, any individual that I come into contact with, has a past record, talking about a criminal record,
Sure.
They're a recovering addict, whatever, I'm not judging that person based on that simple fact.
Sure.
People make mistakes. People make bad decisions. We all have. You don't get to be our age. Well, I'm older than you, but we don't get to be. You don't get to be our age without having done some stupid stuff.
I've done plenty.
But so if a contractor comes up, let's say he's 40 years old, and I can see that, I don't know, he stole a pack of cigarettes when he was 18. Okay, I'm not worried about that.
Sure.
But if I go looking into any past litigation history or any claims against the state Attorney General's office, those are the things I'm looking for. Did he do something devious, illegal, as a business?
Something that that would apply, that maybe has some character issues. That,
Right.
Okay, got it. How does somebody do that? How do you dig that deep into a contractor? Is it just as simple as going and Googling them and seeing what pops up? How do you do that?
Google's a great start.
Okay.
It really is. Not that Google's a sponsor. Not that Google's a sponsor of the show. But Google's a great start. You can also go, like, if you're in Marion County, you can go to Marion County.
Got it. Okay.
If he's licensed in Marion County, you can look up his record. You can go to the state of Indiana's website, and you can pull up the company name and see if there's any litigation against the company. It seems like it's going a little far. I forget what the kids call that when you...
Stalking?
Yeah. No, well, that's what we call it.
Creeping?
And remember, if you're watching at home, there's a fine line between love and stalking. But, never mind. I'll save that joke for another time.
Moving on.
But yeah, whatever they call it now, it's important to do because you're letting this person into your home.
I agree. So tell me, taking that almost a step further, I know I experienced this a lot, and I heard it from, a lot when I was in the contracting world. Hey, this contractor, just went out of business, and they changed their name, and the next day they're, XYZ versus ABC contractor. So how do people look at that? Because contractors may go out of business, and then, they change their name to something else. That can get a little muddy or foggy for some people. How do you look into seeing if this person's actually legit?
Well, I would ask them.
Okay.
Hey, dude, you were ABC Construction, now you're XYZ Construction. What's up?
That's fair.
And I would look up both company names. When I quit doing remodeling full-time, 4 years ago when I started selling real estate, I was Mayo & Sons Construction. Mm-hmm. You'd think with 3 sons under my roof at that point, one of them would have joined in. No. So I quit. I shut down the company. And for 4 years, 3.5 years, all I've done is real estate and build furniture.
Yeah.
Well, now my wife and I and a friend are opening another construction company, so we can start being involved in some of these projects we're talking about and stuff. And we went with a different name, Naptown Homes.
Got it.
Number one, all 3 of us aren't named Mayo. Number 2, none of them are my sons. So
might need to change this name a little bit here.
But my point with that example is, go ahead and ask me that question if you're a homeowner. It's a valid question.
I agree. And so a homeowner really just has to step up and ask the hard questions, and a contractor needs to be prepared to answer those questions.
Right.
Because I think, if you don't have anything to hide, then you're not going to be too concerned about answering a question like that. And I would certainly respect if you told me, well, none of my sons wanted to do this, so I decided to do something different, but this is my passion, and now Naptown's Homes exists, and we're doing some cool shit. So yeah, no, I'm totally tracking with you. Well, great. I think we've really dove into a lot of what hiring a contractor, some of the ins and the outs of what needs to happen there. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap this one up?
Yeah. So just to kind of sum up, as a homeowner, do not be afraid to do your research. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid to sit down and together with the contractor come up with a game plan. How long is the project going to take? How much is it going to cost? How will you communicate with me over the course of the project if something happens, if you run into something? When you do remodeling, you're always going to run into something.
I think it's, not to interrupt, but I want to hover right there real quick.
Yeah.
On running into something. Construction is not a perfect thing. It's not something where, okay, here's our plan A to Z and everything's going to go like this in a straight line. From my experience, construction is a little bit of this. You got to go up here to deviate, then you run down here, then, oh crap, we're over here. And then you still hope to end up at the exact same result. But there's always things that come up because maybe the person who built your house originally took some shortcuts and now you've got to fix that. Or maybe there was a mistake that was made and now you've got water coming in and that wood's rotted that you have to nail the cabinets to. There's so many just unknown factors that you can't know until you really tear into it. So is there anything that homeowners can do to prepare themselves for that, or to maybe even avoid a contractor coming in saying, oh, well, we ran into all of this and now it's going to be $5,000 more? How do you navigate through that? Because that can get real sticky. And I know that's one of the biggest complaints I've ever heard of against contractors is, well, they came in at this price and then all of a sudden it was this price. That's frustrating.
Again, asking the right questions and being willing to ask the tough questions. All right, you're in my home. It was built in 1978. It's a ranch on a crawl. What do you anticipate could be a potential problem?
Yeah.
Again, if he or she's done kitchens before, he'll know, well, we could run into this, we could run into that. It's such a common occurrence running into stuff you didn't anticipate that I wanted to make the tagline for Naptown Homes. Naptown Homes, what's behind your wall? My wife and our other partner both nixed that. Yeah, but I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, ask those questions and then ask them what is the process for dealing with stuff that comes up when it does. Because there's a whole process for that we don't have time to get into today. But you need to know, and just because a contractor says, well, I found this and it's going to be an extra $5,000, prove it.
Help me understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, walk me through
Show me where it's at.
That makes sense. So that's it for today. I think we've covered a lot. Hopefully there was a lot of strong takeaways from this. If this was helpful, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on all of your platforms. Look at that. I stole that one right from you there, didn't I? So definitely check us out again for this episode of Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Ryan Herget.
And I'm Greg Mayo. Thanks, folks.
We appreciate it.